As the 7th annual Kombinatas festival fast approaching, we are revisiting some of the most compelling events from the last year's main stage. Here is Organizing Trade Unions in the Baltic Context by Jurgis Valiukevičius. Enjoy.
So, hello everyone. I will start a presentation. I'm Jurgis Valiukevičius. I am representing today May 1st Trade Union. We call it in Lithuanian GIPS because the abbreviation is G1PS. And we thought it's a cool play of words because GIPS is also what you put on your arm or leg when you break it. So I am a labor lawyer, also union organizer, and today I will speak about the Baltic context, but of course my own experience mostly is from Lithuania, so when I was preparing for this presentation I was trying to find materials about Latvia, Estonia. I realized it's actually not that easy, and especially with historic materials, interwar period, most of the stuff is either in Moscow or in Netherlands in the Social Institute. So this was really out of my scope to do better research, so I decided to focus on what happened since the 90s with some comments about socialist period. But first of all, I want to check how are you doing. I want to ask a few things. So firstly, can you raise your hand who are member in a trade union? Okay, so it's yeah, it's other than GIPS, no matter like any kind of trade union. Can you raise hand who have engaged with a union, trade union in your work life, probably like getting help, consultation, who have at least contacted? Okay. And please raise hand who think that you know your rights as a worker. Okay, so quite good. So maybe you will learn a few things today. One last thing, so a bit about myself, but also a bit about the tradition that I kind of relate to. The word organizing is very important for me, and I keep thinking about it a lot. What does it mean to organize? And speaking about this region, but I think it can go a bit beyond it, the whole Eastern European region. For last 10 years, I think there was some form of new generation of leftists, different kinds of leftists who wanted to engage with labor issues, with workers. And I think by now I know several different organizations like Inicjatyva Pracownicza in Poland, Sedra in Slovenia, who we have here actually, Isidor, welcome. We have in Czech Republic Tenants Union, and GIPS falls also into that category of organizations who are trying to revitalize labor movement. And a lot of influence also came from US. There was this Jane McAlevey who died last year from cancer. She was doing a lot of workshops and she was speaking about organizing. And there is a set of kind of methods, but also a bit going deeper into philosophy. What does it mean to organize? Because we usually think it's just organizing protests. But I think what I came up like in a very short sense, and I like to try to think about the differences between what means to be activism and organizing. And I think organizing, what is nice is that it always you begin to engage with a person with a question, what is important for you? And rather I found it refreshing because for a long time as a leftist I was thinking you need to somehow propagate your ideas. And when you come to someone and you try to explain what is the world, how you should look at it, the most often reaction is like, get away. Nobody likes those explainers, you know. So this organizing methodology and everything came as some sort of refreshing thing, and it actually produced interesting organizations that are still growing by now. If you want to speak about it, you can come to me later. So I am from GIPS, as I mentioned. This is one of the photos from May 1st demonstration in Kaunas. As you can see, it's a lot of young people, but not only. And we have in the middle is, everybody thinks it's a turnip, gvazdikas, no. Philologists help me. Gvazdikas. Carnation. It's not. It's a dandelion, this yellow flower that comes in the spring, but it's angry, so it's red. By now, so we established this organization in 2018. Of course, there was prehistory of doing more informal stuff. As an organization, we functioned for 7 years already. And by now we have allowed around 9 different sections based either on geography, like there is, for example, Ukrainian section in Nida. So this is more like a community space, helping also people to solve their matters. But also recently we established Lithuania Platform Workers Trade Union, which deals with all these bold gig economy things. We have also MDPS, which is Artists Workers Trade Union. Agne is one of the organizers of the festival, and she's one of the initiators. And we have also sections in traditional workplaces like offices and different kind of companies. So it's a mix, a bit of organization. That's all about the GIPS. Maybe I will come back later, but today I wanted to a bit open up the vision, what it is in Baltics, what is the labor movement. And as you can see, and you probably already know, that these 3 countries, well, the whole Eastern Europe bloc is kind of lacking in terms of membership numbers in the union. In the unions by now, but Baltic countries are especially bad in that way. And the union density, the membership numbers are pretty low. Estonia is the lowest, actually. And it's data from 2015. I could not find newer data, so it might be even lower than this. Estonia is 7%. Lithuania, it's 8.5, and Latvia is 11.6, which means that, as you can see, it's around 9,000 unionists, 90,000 unionists in Lithuania, around similar amount of people in Latvia and in Estonia, but it's also a smaller country, much smaller population. So it is 40,000 members. And if we compare it to Finland, where it is 74%, also I think it might be lower by now. It's 2.2 million members in the unions. In Poland, it's only 12%, but as a country that has almost 40 million people, 36 million people, it's 1.5 million people belong to unions. Another thing that you always want to check, speaking about how powerful are the unions, is the collective agreement coverage. Raise your hand who knows what is a collective agreement. Okay, so for those who don't know, collective agreements are specific agreements, a law document that is agreed by the union and the company, or it can go different levels. It can be based on one workplace, it can go up to be based on sectoral levels, so like, let's say, train workers collective agreement, it will cover all the, no, trains are usually single company, but teachers, yeah, let's say teachers, for example, they have, so the idea is that in legal terms, you always have two things in labor law. One is a state law, so it's usually a labor code or separate laws written in about how the contracts should be done, what is the working hours. And then you have collective agreements, which kind of should be more flexible because every industry has different needs and different schedules. So the idea is that if you have unions and also you have employers and employers associations, they should sit down and agree on an agreement, do an agreement. But usually in these countries, it's very low coverage of these like workers. So you can be a worker not in a union, but you might be working according to a certain collective agreement. So as you can see, the numbers are a bit higher than the union membership, but still it's very low. In Latvia, it's only 13% of workers are working according to collective agreement. It might be higher by now, higher. In Lithuania, it got higher actually because of certain legal changes. It's now a quarter of workers should be working according to a collective agreement. Estonia, it's 18.6. And in Finland, it's 91%. And the third segment that you want to look at to think about the unions is also their activity. And the main activity of unions is striking. This is the main kind of tool that we have as workers to stop our work and to force. This is our bargaining power. And striking is also not that often in this region. If we look at the last 23 years, let's say you have 10 years from 2000 to 2009, from 2000 to 10 to 19, and up till now, so all of these countries, they have very small striking hours. It's counted how many days are not worked per 1,000 employees. Interesting thing, if you look at Finland, it had around 69%, 69 hours, 58. What happened in the 2020, 2023? Because suddenly Finland turned red. Is it the right-wing government that... COVID. Okay, so during COVID. So striking is also connected, of course, with collective agreements, because you strike because you want to win something. I mean, not always, and I know anarchists would criticize a lot about this idea that you sign some paper and then you kind of lay down your arms. But in a way, it gives structure for organizations, for the movement, that you are aiming for certain goals, and for that you are trying to push your needs by striking. So why is that? Yeah, why Baltic countries? And Baltic countries are lower in striking compared to other Eastern European countries. The striking hours are usually low in everywhere, but here particularly. And there are a few things. One is that since 90s, the whole industry here, the big industry, mostly collapsed. And and what came out of that was that you have a lot of small companies. So, and imagine if you are a worker probably worked like in a company that has 20 people. There is not much, it's hard to make a class struggle there, yeah, because the boss is nearby you don't want as a person to work in this stressful thing of fighting with your boss. People usually either leave from such companies, or maybe the conditions are actually not that bad, and maybe it's better. And for unions, you also always look for these big communities, big audiences. So the industrial factory, which has hundreds or even thousands of workers, this is the breeding ground for the unions. And if you don't have that, your organizational works become super tough, because you need to spend a lot of time going one by one by one. So you need to figure out other strategies. I already spoke about the collective agreements, and this is one of the reasons one of the reasons why we don't have so many people covered by these collective agreements. You can ask later why these are important, but one of the things comparing to other countries is that, for example, in Sweden and Germany, you have a bit of a different model. It's more corporativist, I think, model. So basically you have few big unions who are agreeing on conditions, on a minimum wage, on other sets, on this high level, and then it goes down to every company. So in general, you have this one big negotiation, and what you agree covers everybody. Scandinavian countries are particularly strong in this kind of tradition. But, for example, in France, what do you think, how in France the union membership is high or low? It's very low. It's actually almost the same as here, 10%, 8%. But you have this thing that once somebody wins good conditions, I think the minister, by the ministry decree, they can extend this agreement to all the sector, and they use it a lot. We have here also some kind of legal formats for that, but it has never been used, I mean, in Lithuania. So in that way, you know, it kind of equals out the competition, because, you know, if workers in one company win big wages, shorter work hours, but at the same point other company is working longer hours for cheaper, so in the free market, the company that exploits workers more, they will win, and the other company will just close. So what you want from the state level is actually to make the competition conditions equal. And of course in France you can see striking red color, and this is also because striking there, and I can move to the next slide, striking there is recognized as a human right. I don't know if it's legally correct term, but basically you don't need to be a union member to strike. This is something you can just, you know, do with your workplace. You say, we are striking, let's sit down for negotiations. And of course, I will not talk a lot. There is a pro-business climate in this region, so it's a bit changing, I would say, by now. But you still have in the political level you used to have a lot of this kind of heroization of business. This is the way to go. So of course this other way of making your life better was kind of seen as a Soviet relic. Like, I mean, this collectivist way, you know, we need to all together be in solidarity and win the conditions for us together. And one thing that I'm also working a lot is super restricted strike law. So I think Lithuania is an exemplary country where the strike law, compared to European countries, is the most restricted. What does it mean? You have a right to strike only if you pass several negotiation procedures. And there are 3 procedures that you need to pass. Otherwise, your strike will be recognized as illegal, and you will face, as an organization, liability for that. So what it means is that basically you have 3 articles in the labor code that speak about, they are called a bit differently, but in a factual way, you basically sit with the same people discussing the same topics. You cannot agree on one time. Then you move to another article. Then you again sit with the same people, you discuss the same topics, because you cannot change the demands that you started with. Then you finish, you don't agree. You go to the next article. So to do a strike, it can take up to 2 years. Through this period, you cannot change your demands. So what happens sometimes, for example, there was a Vilnius public transport driver strike. They went until the striking, the negotiations continued for 2 years. From the beginning, they knew they will have to strike. But once they received the right to strike, the demands that they were raising about the wage were already lower than the minimum wage. So the bosses came out and said, we already raised more than they demand. What do you need? And of course, if you have a law, an article, it means also each party can go to court. And if you lose one court, you can go to the higher court. So what it makes that employers see more beneficial not to negotiate, to find like a compromise, but they see better that it's actually cheaper to pay for the lawyers to find these little things that for which you can go to court. And meanwhile, look for ways how you can destroy this organization or initiative for striking. And they usually manage to do that because people get infuriated very quickly, and very quickly the energy dies out. And you want to use these moments of angriness, of like motivation to do something, you want to use that to mobilize people. Speaking about Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, and more particularly what trade unions function here, interesting fact is that in Latvia you have one trade union center, Elbas, yeah. In Estonia you have two trade union centers. And then once again, if you are more updated Latvians, Estonians about situation, please add, because this is information from 2015, I think. And in Lithuania, you have much more these trade union centers. You have LPSK, Solidarumas, Sandrauga, Respublikinė. Okay, the last one is actually away, almost, yeah. And it tells also a bit interesting story how these countries went from the socialist times, Soviet Union times, to current years. Because, for example, in Latvia, the trade unions that were functioning in Soviet times, they just rewrote their name, and the same kind of structure survived, which is like in some way okay, because it's not good if it's very fragmented, the trade union movement. You want to have big organizations that can pull out big leverage. At the same point, I think you want to also have a bit of a competition between organizations, because you might stagnate and somebody might invent new ways, new communication styles. And I think sometimes it's good to have this, not to be fighting between each other, but to have at least of a dynamic there. I don't know if this is Lithuanian model as an example, and then in Estonia you have IAKL and TALO. And these are kind of, I think AKL is the main one. And you always have, except of Latvia, where educational workers, railway transport, health and social work, they are related to this central trade union. In other countries, you also have teachers, health workers, and sometimes also public transport workers, the strongest unionized professions. You have them separately also as single unions. And it's, I think, quite common not only here. Interesting fact also that it's more female membership there. For example, in Latvia, it's 61% of union members are women. In Lithuania, it is 58%, at least according to LPSK numbers, so the union that are telling their own numbers. Also politically, in Lithuania, for example, LPSK, the main one, it is more related to Social Democratic Party. They had different relationship stages, of course, but there are these connections. There is Solidarumas, Solidarność, so they are more nationalist. They used to be related to more conservative party, by now they are just more neutral. Meanwhile, in Latvia, and I was surprised that Social Democrats really are not doing good in Latvia. They haven't been in the parliament, I don't know if they are now. The union is politically neutral, so I think they just work with whoever they can, who is in the power. And in Estonia also, IAKL signed cooperation with Estonian Center Party, which was, I think, 2022 something it won. So again, more like centrist, more neutral. Not neutral, this is what they tell, it's neutral, but we all know. So, speaking about a bit about the history, these countries in 90s gained independence, so we have like 35 years by now that these countries are trying to run as in democratic, independent countries. But the 90s period, the 10 years, or even until the accession to EU in 2004, it's a very interesting period, because you kind of see like processes that have been going on in Western countries, in these core capitalist countries, that have been going for like 100, 200 years, with like people being moved out from the land, some kind of privatization and so on. I think here you have this concentration in 10 years, and of course this generalization is maybe not correct, but still you have this super quick period where you see how capitalism appears, how free market appears. And it's very interesting because it always involves theft. And we like to think that this theft, mafia period was something that, because we did not know how democracy works, we did not know how we should be a civil society, that's why we had mafia, we had this. No, I think we should integrate this mafia period into general history of how capitalism appears, and this was something very natural. Even there was, I think, this Chicago Boys, somebody said that mafia is actually instrumental in bringing free market in these countries in 90s, I think. What was the scheme? So, for example, I was looking a bit more into one factory in Kaunas, Inkaras factory. And the scheme was, at least in Lithuania, I don't know how in Latvia and Estonia, but at the beginning, around 1991, 1992, workers would get investment checks. So it's like a share of the company that you're working in. The idea was that everybody will be a small businessman. This was like a very kind of times when everybody thought that, one day I will be businessman. And how you would steal this industry is basically you open these offices to collect these investment checks, and people really didn't know what is the value of these checks. So basically you buy these checks in large amounts, you collect them for very little money, or maybe you say in 5 years you will get very good interest. With these checks, you go to the auctions that the state was running. Of course, there was some mafia, like you need to know when it is happening. There were stories where, somebody wants to buy something and they come and there's a guy standing and saying, you will not. And there is somebody already agreed. So you buy the factory, and then because the Soviet economy was kind of flagging, you take out, there was this idea that you take out a loan from, foreign kind of markets, and you invest into production, renewing the production, so you would be able to compete with like other markets. You take out the loan and you don't invest in the production. You take out this money, half an hour, yeah. You take out this money again out of the country. So there was this period in the 90s when there was no liquidity in the market, no money. And people started getting wages with shoes, with what they produce, and they would go to the market to sell it. And this was because all the financial capital was sucked out. Because it was no point to invest here. The economy crashed, and like you want to invest somewhere safer, offshores. Then you announce the bankruptcy because you cannot pay, you don't have money how to pay the workers. And after that, you sell all the, like maybe not you, it's already the bankruptcy, like the bailiffs who come, then they sell the metals, and a lot of also these raw materials, they were moving out of this region, basically selling. And of course, in all of this, you need to have special protection. So there is a lot of connections between those who were doing these schemes, those in power. And here you can see this was, and this is again something that was repeating in Eastern Europe. I think in Albania, it even almost started a civil war. So basically, these banks that would open and would say, you will get, in 1 month, you will get for your 100 litas, you will get 200 liters, and then it was a pyramid schemes. So people lost their money, of course, and this is one of the protests saying that in the newspaper you were advertising that you are collecting the investment checks, but you didn't. But why didn't you give it back? So one of particular stories, but I was trying to collect a bit stories from unionists about these times, and it's interesting to say that actually there was a lot of activities during 90s, during this perestroika. There was a lot of kind of willingness to fight back, but I think as the industry was closing, most of the fights were about getting back your wage. It wasn't about winning more. So it was always this defensive thing. And there was one thing that came out was actually hunger strikes. And this is a photo of a success of one hunger strike in Kaunas. Basically, people were on hunger strike for 20 days. 3 people, others were guarding them, and here's the title, even the president could not change the mind of the people. What happened in the end that they did not win money from the owners, and the owner is this big guy, he owned like around 40% of all privatized industries in Kaunas region, let's say, or even more, I don't know. So it was not the capitalist or this mafia guy who paid, it was the state that brought in a Maxima bag, brought 20,000 liters and distributed to each worker. And if you think, it shows also the level of agency, what people had. So the kind of hunger strike, because the body was the last kind of property that you could risk. And the state was reacting to that. So hunger strikes, especially after this success story, it became popular. In legislation, what it produced, the strike, was that they created a bankruptcy fund. So employers have to pay a little to this fund in case they go bankrupt, so that the state would be able to pay to workers what they owe to them. Another story I was trying to cover also was Alytus textile factory. So Alytus is a smaller town, and it was tied to this textile industry. I think Alytus has 60,000 people in this factory worked. At the biggest time, I think it was around 9,000 people. So you can imagine this one city, mono-industry city. It was more industries, but it was super important. And it closed in 2007. But what I was looking at a bit more, how did people react to this? And one of the stories that I found was that they tried to take, not kidnap, but close the director in the office. So workers just came, they were protesting for wages to be paid back. They did not, and at some point they just went through the door, pushed the police, and they came to the director and they said, until you are not paying us back, we will not leave. So, and there's this small story, like when the director asked that she wants to go to toilet to pee, they just gave a bucket and said, here, you can do it here. But there is this, I did some interviews, so you might get a feeling of what people were kind of, or what they are feeling about these times now. So this one woman tells, we gathered in director's office and we were talking. And it's not this case when they were already protesting, it was previously, when it was still kind of possible they thought that it's possible to save this factory. So, and we were talking, what to do now? I said, let's go everyone on 500 liters wage. If we want to save the situation, then let's cut the bread equally. Of course, we laughed about it. My colleague after the meeting asked me, why did you say these things? And what did I do? I think it was the best solution. If one gets 200 and another wants 20,000, then there will be no future. So I wanted to show this because I think it was also very psychological transformation, this appearance of a society that is class society. So, of course, in Soviet times, you also had different strata of society, but then suddenly you have this very direct experience that the owners, the director of the factory is interested to exploit you more. And in Soviet times, it was a bit different story, but they were talking a lot about this kind of community disappearance, that these thieves came, like they called the thieves are the owners who came to steal the factory. So suddenly you have this in front of you relationship that is relation of exploitation. I wanted to share, so what I'm talking to you is probably something that you can find in a lot of academic articles about how this region transformed. And you always have this, neoliberalism, capitalism, free market ideology. But I always get a bit of a feeling that where is the agency for unionists themselves? Because if you read these, descriptions of how capitalism works, it's actually hard to see where you can change it. It just feels hopeless in a way. But I think it's interesting also to think about organizing methods and skills that we have as organizations, as activists, to be able to resist certain things. And in that way, the Soviet experience wasn't helpful, not that much, because it really was, the unions were integrated in the state structure, and there wasn't much freedom. Yeah, there was certain freedom, very limited, but you cannot really speak about independent trade union movement. And actually, you cannot speak about it not only from the Soviet period. There was already dictatorships here in Baltic countries before the Soviet period. So, for example, since 1936 in Lithuania, Smetona, who was the dictator at that time, he closed down all the unions, even the Christian ones who was kind of supporting him. And he established this kind of state structure for dealing with labor matters. So you kind of see already the beginning of what later on was done in the Soviet times. So once we come out of this Soviet period and unions are suddenly faced with these bankruptcies and this like collapsing economy, so what do trade unions do? Yeah, because they are a big organization. It was like 90% of membership there. It started to fall, but it was falling. So this David Ost, who is actually, I recommend to read his articles if you're interested in academic field. So what he's telling that actually it was also union leaders who were partly responsible because they did not want certain workers in the unions. Because in Soviet times you had these surplus workers in the factories. The state was saying we will guarantee you full employment. So what happened is that you had a lot of these workers who did nothing. And there was another workers who actually wanted the companies to run smoothly, to produce good things. The more like engineers, higher strata. These were usually the union leaders, the more educated. And so what David Ost tells, I will read the citation, unions became weak not because they were repressed by the new capitalist system, as many Western leftists like to believe, and not because workers were treated well by the new system, as Western conservatives like to believe, but because union leaders largely agreed with the policies aimed at weakening them. So, and I think that in some way it's quite true about what he's telling, that the unions themselves, the leaders, this generation somehow wanted these changes. So I will skip that slide, but I think already 35 years passed and we can already talk about different generations. And by now I would say that this 90s crisis until accession to Europe and later on the financial crisis, it was a downward turn, but around this financial crisis, I think unions also became more kind of willing to organize, willing to engage new people. They realized that, they need to do that if they want to save themselves. One thing also is that the same as the companies were privatizing individuals, the unions were holding big amounts of places like this. Like here you are in a Soviet-built campsite for the workers. they were holding this property, and you know what happens when privatization starts? You get fights, yeah, like in the relatives, in the families, everybody started fighting. So you had also this process. They had to kind of give away all of that to finally come back to the idea that your membership is the one that you need to build to be able to live as an organization. But in Lithuania, I would say that also you see much more activity over the last 10 years. Maybe it's not reflected in membership numbers. I mean, it's stabilized. It kind of grows a bit more. But I would say that, so in 2016, we had Occupation Against Liberalization of Labor Code. I was part of it. I think what was new there, that it was a new strategy how to protest. So we were trying to do this kind of Wall Street, Occupy Wall Street style, occupying the stairs of the government. And later on, the strategy was also repeated in teachers' strike and occupation of ministries. So when teachers striked, they went to the ministry and they were just sleeping there for 2 weeks or I don't know how long, but so they occupy there. And it produces media attention, it produces political conflict, political debates, so it's something that you want to have if you do a strike. Only in 2020, I'm speaking about Lithuania here, only in 2020, so 30 years since independence, we have a first strike in a private company. So it was always teachers, public transport drivers who would be striking. The strike was not successful, but still, as a first strike, it's worth mentioning it. And you have Vilnius public transport strike in 2022. They won it, and I think it was one of the strikes that felt on Vilnius inhabitants, because it was super cold. You wait for the bus, and you don't fit into it, and you wait for half an hour for the bus, and you still cannot get in there. But what was interesting to see that people supported the strike. You used to have this all the time, and it comes out of this, I think, neoliberal mindset that why are they striking? Why they're demanding more? I get even less. So there is this kind of, always mistrust about strikings. And in 2022, I think it was really supported by the city people and even more. And something that I am also personally working on, I'm pushing this topic, is that unions are demanding liberalization of strike laws. So the idea is that striking would be one of the tools that you can use in negotiations. And I expect that laws will be changed for this, and it would be a huge, nice thing, progress for that. I was trying to see what's happening in Latvia and Estonia, and I think the same tendencies repeat, that it's healthcare and educational workers who are striking or showing activity, even saying that they would be striking, but maybe they don't. But this is some kind of, at least to say you are thinking about it. And also in Estonia, I think dock workers showed some activity. But yeah, I need to run with the time. And you also have these new organizing approaches coming to this region, and I would mention one is BOA, or Baltic Organizing Academy, which was run by Estonian, Latvian, Lithuanian unions with connection to Scandinavian countries. So they were funding the school, even funding like a personnel who would be organizers, who would be going out and engaging with certain company or certain sector where you want to organize. And this came out of realization by the Scandinavian unions that Baltic countries are becoming this place without any unions, and the companies start hiring people here, and they can pay much less, so it hurts the Scandinavian workers too. You also have COS, which is related to Uni Global Union. It's based in Prague. and they are also teaching this kind of ways of how to organize. And I also mention ourselves as a way to also a bit bring more progressive politics into the union movement. And you have also a bit of a change about unions in public opinions. So let's say in 2019, 23% of in Estonia said they would be ready to join a trade union if it existed in their workplace. In Latvia, it's a bit different story. Maybe Latvians can add, but I don't know. In 2016, unions, more people thought negatively about the unions as related to Soviet past rather than positively. And in Lithuania, in 2023, so I know that the LPSK, one of the unions, they were doing these polls every year to check how the society thinks about the unions. And it's changed a lot. So in 2023, 10 minutes, the results revealed that as many as 2/3 of respondents believe that trade unions are necessary. So this is also the time when the public transport workers are striking. So you have much more union presence in the media, even in the political level. There is some sort of realization that, okay, this is something that is important and we need to strengthen it, of course, to certain limits. And recent news, so this person, Inga Ruginienė, she was the trade union leader of this LPSK, the main trade union. And on Tuesday, the parliament is voting to confirm her as a prime minister, which is an interesting story because she's fresh in the politics. So there was a lot of jokes. This is one of the meme portal. It says, when you hire a worker, but during the interview you realize they will start a trade union. And this is the president who's like, So, and you had this like, anyway, all these jokes. So it's an interesting period because I think, it's interesting for me personally because I'm advisor to her. But also I think, I don't know how much you will be able to change. We want the unions to be stronger, yeah? But what can the state do? They cannot force you to join the union. This is what we tried in the Soviet times. It doesn't help, What the state can do is to give certain encouragements. For example, in Lithuania, you can assign a part of what you pay to taxes, and yearly you can assign part to the unions. So you can encourage, but you cannot force people to do. But I think with Inga becoming a prime minister, and I hope she will continue this line, is also you hold this symbolic level as a politician, and you can encourage people to become more active. And she's speaking a lot about strengthening the social dialogue, strengthening NGOs, unions, and community organizations. So I think that would be interesting and somehow sustainable in a long term because, she will be prime minister for some time, then it will be elections, I think. Everything can change, but anyway. So actually I want to stop here. A small thing from teaching how to be an organizer is you shouldn't say thank you. So when people come to your meeting, but you invite people to come for the meeting to discuss that maybe we need to establish a trade union. One of the rhetoric suggestions is avoid thank you, because you kind of create that, thanks for coming here, like if you would be making a service to me. No, we are all here in the same position fighting together, and you are doing that for yourself. So I'm always saying, I'm happy you gathered here. So that's all for me. I also have 2 copies of how to establish a union in your workplace in Lithuanian. I will leave them somewhere by the distro table. You can have a glance, and I guess you can take it if nobody else takes it. Questions, yeah. How much time we have? We have 6 minutes. Can you give me a drink? Yes.
We have around 6 minutes. Let's see how the hands are. We have 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Any more hands around? 4. Perfect. 4, 3, 4. Are we done? 5. Amazing. Okay, then. So what we do is you take the microphone, you speak for 20 seconds. We try to remember the question. Jurgi, do you have a pen or something?
Who has a pen?
Who has a pen? Please lend the pen to Anna. Will lend the pen. Perfect. We do it quick, nice, and perfect. Jurgi will answer the questions. Let's start the round from... Could you raise your hands again? 1, 2, 3. Perfect. We'll do like that. Perfect. Let's go.
Hi, my name is Marie, and I'm interested in this because I'm from Denmark, and it's obviously very different. So what I'm most curious about is that you're saying that your unions, the strongest unions here, are in healthcare and education. Is that also where there's most activity? How can you see this influencing unionism in general? Does that mean that your unionism is more feminist? What is the power balance, especially with more also women members of unions? I'm a bit curious about this.
Wow, thank you. Let's go on. We have the second hand right here. Thank you.
Hi, thanks. I'm Laura from Germany, more or less. So one short question about how can unions become more attractive. In Germany, you can tax deduct your union membership fee. Maybe that's something. Maybe you also do that. Second thing, I was wondering about this classic jobs, joining labor unions and the unions that you set up for Uber drivers, etc., which is of course more difficult to organize, and not only because many people working there are usually migrants with fewer rights in the country, and secondly also because it's private, like franchise, sub organizers, etc. So I was just wondering whether you could comment on the difficulties in setting up those unions.
Okay. Hi, I'm from Latvia, and my question is: does Lithuania have a similar law in public procurement where unionized companies can be prioritized if the conditions are similar between contestants in public procurements?
Thank you. We have one before the last question there. Here you go. Thank you.
I'll try to be direct. In 2023, we also had in Lithuania the teachers' strike. You didn't have this in the slide, in which I participated, and 5 different teachers' unions kind of maybe started, but 4 of them quit and 1 continued. And maybe you know the situation. Do you see this as an example of this in trade union, like that they the fragmentation of those teachers' unions, that they are fragmented, made the strike fail in some way?
Wow, tough thing.
Maybe I answer now and then I take... Okay. Okay. No.
2 very short questions. Institutionalization versus radicalism. I mean, when you talk with Lithuanian union, at least insiders or leaders, they don't like strikes. They want mediation. So how do you feel about it? And quoting the famous philosopher Little John, turned out to strike for what? Don't you believe that maybe certain topics, for example, professional pensions, could be a very good idea for unions to take up, because the law exists, nobody has ever done it, and as a good bargaining chip for attracting people who maybe not be interested in joining a union, but getting 3% or 2% of wage putting into a fund?
Thank you.
All? Okay. Question from Denmark, comrade. About the women, I would say that even the leading positions are also a lot of women. There is, of course, for example, the main teachers' union that is the main one that is striking every year, and I think it's the most militant union in Lithuania. not every year, every 4 years. Their leader is male, although the profession itself is dominated by women. Not I mean, you understand. It's not. And speaking about these professions, and then speaking about other professions, more precarious professions, there is, I would say, a growing interest in the unions, but there is one thing that it drags also from the 90s, is this feeling of hopelessness a bit. So basically you go to the person and you say, let's unionize. And they say, oh, I really like the idea, but my colleagues will not. You go to the next colleague and they say, yes, I like the idea, but my colleagues don't want to. So there is this thing that people think that others don't want to do something. So there is this distrust between the people. And I think we are trying to show, to break through this by showing even small but victories and positive examples. Basically, as a person, I think when you grow up, there are two strategies. One individualist, other collectivist strategy to make your life good. So you might be willing to do a career in an individual level. And this is, I think, what our parents have been telling us. And this is the generational experience of 90s, that you are on your own. Nobody will help you. What we as a leftists, as a unions, trying to do is offer collectivist strategies, but also the ones that would help you in life. So you don't need to lick the asses. You might even fight, together. Tax reduction, great idea, actually. Thank you. Gig workers organizing. It's a very particular sector. We've been trying to organize it since COVID, early COVID. Vuk is here. He was the one who initiated it. But we were unsuccessful, I would say, for some time. Like, we did strikes, and this sector is particular because it has a lot of strikes, these wildcat strikes, because people don't have labor relations, so you can just stop, log in. But the strikes were not successful, so it produced also this disbelief in this method. And what we were struggling is also to find people who would relate to this profession and who could become the faces, the organizers, because you don't want to be organizer, like to be the face of organization if it's not your profession. It took us a while, and we established this organization. I think once we found a group of 6 people who see it as their profession, they feel angry about what's happening, and they want to do something with it. So this is how we kind of changed the strategy from trying to go very broad and catch all these couriers into trying to focus on even a small group, but persistent group, and then trying to work on the social media. And also this EU directive for platform work really created a space to go to the ministries to create new law, and we are trying to push that it would be recognized as work according to conditions that exist now. So the companies might change their strategy, of course, but that's another story. Latvia has, why I was saying that the collective agreement coverage is probably higher by now, because Latvia introduced, I think, sectorial collective agreement for construction workers, which is good. Latvia public procurement. Okay, so I don't think we have this. I think it's one of the things that could be, So like the idea is that we pay to the state, we bring the budget for the state, and we want the state to spend this money on companies that treat their workers nicely. That's why we want that the companies that win competitions for public money to build something, they would also have collective agreements. So this is one of the ways how you can encourage these things to appear. But of course, companies can also just create fake unions and sign fake collective agreements. But anyway, this is some kind of opportunity for the unions to be active. Teacher strike 2023, I was speaking about the previous one. This strike was also interesting. So the teachers, the union, they decided to this time to do like a pilgrimage trip. So they were going from all the corners of Lithuania, they were walking to the capital. And it was, I think, a clever move because it created this tension, it created media videos, of teachers just walking and visiting every school in the village. The strike, I know that, you never win everything in the strike, but as far as I know, the union has a strategy to strike, well, not every 4 years, but basically they grow their strike fund and they go to strike. And with every strike, they grow. Because other unions, as you mentioned, they use this opportunity when there is a strike. They come out and say, we are the ones, the good ones, we will sign the collective agreement. They get media attention, they get, the state loves them because you're good, you're not angry. These are the angry workers. So it is a big problem, and I think among the teachers, trade unions, this is really, their relationship, I think, is not good between the unions for very good reasons, actually. And about teachers, I wanted to say, so this, when they occupied the ministry, the same thing was happening also. Like they occupied the third level. There was a big hall. They would sleep there, and they're there, sitting every day. And suddenly somebody comes in the room and it's like, hey, other unions are signing like agreement in the second floor, And then you see in the media that ministry is like, we wrote to the striking union, they did not answer us, so we started negotiations without them. It's like you just walk one stair up and they're there. So you saw this very, Institutionalization, radicalization. I was actually helping with this public transport worker strike in Vilnius. I was going to negotiations, like I was helping with media. I felt it on myself, the strike lasted for 2 weeks, and every day you work until 2 o'clock in the night. And at some point, you're like, I want this to end, As a leftist, you are always dreaming about these strike moments, and like, you just get tired. And I think this is, and this was the weakness of this union, because it's a very traditional union. It has like very clear structure, hierarchy. And that it means that all the responsibility falls on this one chairperson, and then suddenly it becomes so much responsibilities and so much depends on his own willingness to fight it. Funny story from that. So we were basically in the middle. They got to know that basically all of their demands are reached. What they demanding was actually that a new director came, and he came out of this very business, corporative mindset. He wanted to change everything, and this is some old company that has old traditions, and there's all like people who have been working there for 40, 30 years. And suddenly, instead of getting a benefit bonus because you have worked there for 10 or 15 years, this director comes and says, no, we will do other stuff. We will pay you bonus if you give us a good suggestion how the company could improve. This. And people are like, what? Like, it's a totally different, people there. It's not like a corporate mindset. So they got super angry on him. And the strike, already in the middle, it was clear that they have won what they wanted. And then, so we were speaking with this chair that in the night that, okay, it's a good moment to end. The strike isn't still in a full swing. You don't want to end strike too late. Once the people start going back to work, it will be destroyed in 1 or 2 days. And then your negotiations are much lower. So you want to end it at a good point. And we say, okay, tomorrow we call everyone, we end it. Next day, in the morning, these people come, and it's like 400 people in the hall. And this guy comes, and he starts the speech. They did not give anything to us. They're still lying to us. And everybody's like, strike, strike, strike. And I'm like, looking at, what the fuck? Like, why did you do this? He got caught by emotions, I don't know what. And then after this meeting, he was sitting in the office and like, we don't have money anymore to pay the workers. What did I do? Why did I tell this? So the strike lasted for 3 more days just because, that morning he was kind of in that mood, revolutionary mood. But there is always this tension. I think this is something that organizations need to work out, to have a structure that is not relying on one person. And different topics for striking, yeah, that would be great. This professional pensions is also, I think, something that can build up confidence in this second pillar pension in Lithuania, but this is local issues. That's all.
Great job there, great job. Amazing.